This is Luke Paulson, the Catholic Conservative, and welcome to the news of the week for March 23rd, 2024. And if you enjoy these videos, do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. Free the political prisoners. President Trump has vowed to release the political prisoners of the mostly peaceful protest of January 6th. He just has to not release actual terrorists like Ray Epps.
In fact, tomorrow, I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested.
Well, let's not say it.
We need to go. I'll say it.
All right.
We need to go in.
Shut the fuck up, Boomer.
To the Capitol.
Or his colleagues in the FBI. Naturally, the fake news is very upset that people who are guilty of trespassing at worst are being set free. They cannot imagine a world in which innocent people are not locked up. After all, cackling Kamala bailed out the rioters who burned down cities while running for vice president. Stick around to the end to see how Democrats deal with the illegals that trespass on private property. Lying about an idiom. There are a lot of idioms out there, such as bloodbath. Here are a few examples of liberals using the term.
Headlines calling it a, quote, bloodbath. Be a bloodbath. Not only is it going to be a bloodbath, but after they leave New Hampshire, it's a bloodbath on her home turf. That's really tough.
Trump has left a lot of corpses in his wake. I mean, we can count the bodies as part of the, quote, MAGA drive to take over Maricopa County. And the headline refers to it as an impending bloodbath.
Now, when President Trump uses the same term, they attack him. In context, he warned about how China and Mexico would be building cheap cars to undercut the American auto industry. He then warned if he did not win, there would be a bloodbath for the American people. This is a term that he is not allowed to use. According to the fake news, he tends to call for violence even though he never has. According to the fake news, he has called for an insurrection even though he never has. According to the fake news, he is cognitively impaired even though this is a quality of Brandon. Speaking of Brandon's qualities, Brandon's incredible rage. According to both the fake news and his staff, Brandon is getting more unhinged. Now, when the fake news says something critical of Joe Biden, that means that there might be something there. However, this is not news to anyone who was paying attention to his campaign before his first election. He was emotionally unstable then as well. He regularly insulted people if they did not stand with him on every topic under the sun. Then came the virus. This allowed him to campaign from his basement where he could be controlled much more easily. I am wondering if the 4-year virus for this election cycle will once again be the China virus or something else. If it is something else, I am putting my money on a measles outbreak. However, we are still dealing with the consequences of the China virus. The Pfizer Amendment. France is far from a beacon of freedom and liberty. Most recently, they passed a law that allows someone to be fined if they dare to question an mRNA vaccine. Now the fake news is working overtime to say that people are taking it out of context. Here is the truth. You can be fined after saying that you disagree with the efficacy or safety of one of these mRNA vaccines. Their fake news is going to tell you that this is only for those who use repeated pressure or manipulation. How these two are defined, they will not tell you. However, I tell you this, since their legislature got away with this, it will not be long before even more draconian measures will be put into place. It will not be long before saying something contrary to flip-flop Fauci will land you in prison. France will pass another such law about the next 4-year virus. Again, if it is not the China virus revisited, my money is on measles. Boeing whistleblower dead. John Barnett is dead and there are no two ways about it. Now, under normal circumstances, something like this would not be newsworthy. However, this is the Boeing whistleblower who had just testified in court against his former employers. Boeing failed 33 of 89 audits by the FAA. So I'm wondering why we need this federal agency if the same companies that they regulate can essentially pay for them to say nothing. You'll find more often than not that those who are in charge of enforcing the rules have the most to gain from breaking the rules. Moving on, Barnett was found dead before he could once again testify in court. Mr. Barnett was a quality control specialist who brought multiple issues to his higher-ups, but they did nothing. When someone is a big enough threat, the powers that be can take them out very effectively. Continuing resolutions from Pelosi. I do not understand a lot of this legal mumbo-jumbo, but from what I do understand, Speaker Mike Johnson, in an attempt to avoid a government shutdown that will be perfectly fine, is passing continuing resolutions that go back to Nancy Pelosi. He could potentially just do this the entire year, according to Representative Stacey Plaskett. Johnson has to be careful, otherwise he could lose his seat just like McCarthy did. However, playing devil's advocate for a moment, our political landscape is so divided that nothing can get done.
One can only hope.
That being said, I am not opposed to a government shutdown. During Obama's term, he spent the extra money to put up barricades to keep World War II veterans from visiting the memorial. He also told his staff to make the shutdown as painful as possible. If there's a government shutdown under Brandon, Obama will order his puppet to make it as painful as possible. During President Trump's term, he paid for dinner at the White House out of his own pocket. The mail will still go out and everything will continue. In truth, it is probably just the useless regulators and bureaucrats from the alphabet soup that will not have a job. Not that I really care that much about people who are paid to make my life harder. Tyson Foods hires illegals. Tyson Foods has gone out of their way to fire American workers. They will now be hiring illegals for less. Do not be surprised if the lower wages become the industry standard. We need to not just boycott Tyson, but all brands that are under their umbrella. These include Jimmy Dean, Hillshire Farm, Ballpark, Wright Brand, Adel, State Fair, Raised and Rooted, IBP, Nature Raised Farms, Top Chews, and True Chews. Their plant in Iowa is closing after 61 years and they are moving to New York. There are always plenty of illegals there thanks to it being a sanctuary city. Tyson Foods is a traitor to this country, just like Planet Fitness is a traitor to women. Planet Fitness Bud Lights itself. Planet Fitness has followed the trend of a lot of these big companies and has gotten infected by the woke mind virus. Since they are a judgment-free zone, they allowed a grown man to get into the women's locker room. He was just standing there shaving his face in plain view of a tween girl who had nothing but a towel. When a Christian woman called him out on it, her membership was revoked. However, according to her, Planet Fitness just saved her the trouble of having to do it herself. The gym is now facing boycotts over their nonsense. It has also been reported that there have been a string of sexual abuse cases as well. After all, the only reason that a man would want to get into the women's locker room is to take in a show, or to cover up the fact that he is trying to dominate the field. The fact remains that woke companies are catering to less than 1% of the population and throwing to the side everyone else. Speaking of athletes, photoshopped swimsuits. Now, I am sure you have seen these images floating around the internet lately. From what I have found, these images are not the originals. They are photoshopped from already existing images. This just goes to show you that even when the image manipulation is harmless, doctored images can really get around. A few weeks ago, there was a rumor that the NCAA was taking the medals away from male swimmer Leah Thomas to give to the actual winner Riley Gaines. This was clearly labeled as satire, but a lot of conservative outlets ran with it. This just shows that we need to be very careful not to spread fake news. After all, we do not want to be on par with CNN. Speaking of outfits that are not newsworthy, culturally appropriated leprechauns. Every Halloween we hear how wrong it is to have culturally appropriated costumes. However, on St. Patrick's Day, not one liberal got upset over appropriating Irish culture. Why would they not talk about this? It seems right up their alley to complain about things that do not matter. The problem is that no melanin poor person is an oppressed group. The fake news has blatant anti-whiteism and will never call this out. Anyone can wear dreads or wear a headdress like these. It is only a problem for snowflakes and Karens that wake up in the morning looking for new things to be offended by. On a side note, the one Irishman that I spoke to about this actually enjoys all of this as it is a celebration of his culture. Something that the oppressed groups could learn from. Ben Shapiro on retirement. Ben Shapiro got himself in some hot water lately. This time it was not calling pansexuals weird on a hot mic. He claimed that retirement was a ridiculous concept and that the age for retirement should be raised. Social Security itself is not fiscally sustainable and you actually would get more on your return from a private account. He argued that people should not retire unless they have a medical issue. It is true that a lot of people who retire and do nothing soon end up just dying. If you're going to retire, you need to do something meaningful with your time. Otherwise, you will just fade away, and that is no exaggeration. Could he have phrased it a little better?
Yes.
Was he on the right track?
Yes.
However, while we need to be fiscally responsible, if conservatives turn off every voter, then voters will turn to the Communist and the Democratic Party alongside the imported voters. Speaking of new voters for the Democratic Party, illegals have rights. We know that the Democrats are letting in all of these illegals to shift the political landscape. Now we have TikTokers releasing tips on how to squat in abandoned houses. Conservatives have been saying for years that you should lock your home for the same reason that we need a border wall. We were called racist, and it was called a false comparison. Now the illegals are squatting in privately owned houses, and the owners have to take them to court to remove them. Over in Illinois, a judge has ruled that the same illegals have the right to purchase guns under the Second Amendment. Meanwhile, they have such strict gun laws for the rest of us that only criminals can get guns. I guess that means criminals are still getting guns. On top of all of this, Mexico is now refusing to accept deportations from Texas. So they are squatting in our homes and we cannot get rid of them. And they can even defend themselves from actual Americans that stand up to them. And we cannot deport them. This is, in a word,
ironic.
Maybe I'm just blowing smoke. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker, but that is just my opinion. And do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. But before you go, on the left I have last week's video, but you may also enjoy the video on the right.